Would Paul MacLean, our last individual inductee, please come forward? Believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, Paul MacLean, the great Antigonish NHLer, was born in Grandstanquin, France. In 1958, the year of his birth, Paul's dad, Ev, was in the Canadian Air Force. Though he could claim official military bratness, he did nonetheless spend most of his formative years in Antigonish, where he discovered he loved both a sport called hockey and a girl named Sharon. Paul and Sharon became secret high school sweethearts primarily because Paul was very shy, especially around women, and he didn't want to take the ribbing from the guys which would naturally roll his way if it was learned that he had a girlfriend. All was fine till social studies teacher Bill Kiley caught them holding hands in class one afternoon. It was said that on that day Paul's face turned redder than the maple leaf on the Olympic uniform he would one day wear. Young Paul MacLean was rolling along as a high-scoring junior hockey player for the Antigonish Bulldogs until Frank Beaton, a local star who eventually played for the New York Rangers, pulled him aside and told him if he wanted to make it in the NHL, he had to learn to fight. Two of them began sparring together in the local parish hall. The bad news was Paul, who was the league's leading scorer before he received this sage advice, got kicked out the first period of his next 3 games for fighting. The good news was that Beaton left town to pursue his own career, and Paul was able to return to his old scoring ways, even when he moved up to Quebec to play Junior A hockey for Hull, where he amassed 71 points in 66 games. The old ways must have impressed somebody because he was chosen 109th overall by the St. Louis Blues in 1978. His dreams of one day playing in the NHL were dashed, however, when he had a poor tryout camp. Since his pro aspirations were given a bit of a setback, he made the mature decision to see if he couldn't use his hockey to get an education. Canada was going to have an Olympic team in 1980 for the first time in 12 years. Calgary Flames coach Pierre Paget, who was then coach at Dal, sold MacLean on the idea that if he came to Dal, he'd have a good chance to make the Olympic team because Olympic scout Father Bauer was a good friend of Paget's. In truth, Bauer wasn't really interested in MacLean, but promised after many phone calls to come to a few Dal Christmas exhibition games against York University in Toronto. He decided that MacLean had the stuff, but that he took too many penalties and was too undisciplined for international hockey. When MacLean got wind of the assessment, he learned to play the extremely physical game he'd always played, but under control. During the CIAU playoffs, Father Bauer came to another Dal game against Toronto. He saw MacLean refuse to get sucked into a fight early in the first period and then score the overtime game winner. At Father Bauer's suggestion, Clark Drake and Lauren Davis invited MacLean to attend the Olympic training camp. Of course, the rest is history. MacLean made the team, and MacLean returned from Lake Placid as one of Canada's great Olympic players. En route to the Olympics, he was chosen the MVP at Dal, scoring 12 goals and getting 17 assists, while leading them to a second-place finish among Canadian universities. While at Dal, he always worked hard in practice, and he almost always behaved himself. There was a time or two, however, when the stories point out that boys will be boys. For example, when Dal won the semifinals in the AUAAs, Paget told the boys to go home and go to sleep. He later found out that though they'd gone home to bed, it was only after they spent some celebration time downtown and after breakfasting on Tony's Donaires at 3 in the morning. Paget called them all in on Sunday afternoon to read them the riot act about taking care of themselves. While halfway through his lecture, he watched our superstar here disappear into the bathroom. After which, Allie McDonald says all the team could hear throughout the motivational lecture on what was meant by taking care of one's body was Paul MacLean tossing his groceries in the next room. It wasn't long after that Paul learned that he might not be quite as important as he thought. After changing in the Halifax Forum dressing room, the Dal team and Paget got on a team bus. Paget asked if everyone was there. He was told, yep, and they okayed the departure for the Metro Center for the final AUAA game against St. Mary's. Neither he nor the team realized that their MVP was still in the bathroom. When they got to the Metro Center, they still never noticed he wasn't there until he walked in. Of course, they might have missed him later, since he scored 2 goals, the second in the overtime period, to give Dal their first AUAA hockey title in over 60 years. MacLean's university season helped, but it was really the Olympic team experience which gave him the maturity to make the big step up. He scored 32 goals playing in 50 exhibition games with the Olympic team, including 2 against the Edmonton Oilers and 1 against the Russians, in which he scored a goal and had 2 assists. He then scored 5 more points while playing in 6 games in the 1980 Lake Placid Olympics. St. Louis sent MacLean to Salt Lake City to see if he could do to the pros what he'd been able to do to the international amateurs. While the Blues were finishing second in the NHL, MacLean was scoring 78 points on 36 goals and 42 assists in the International League. He was all set to join the Blues when, on July 3rd, 1981, he got word that he'd been traded to Winnipeg. He, Brian Maxwell, and Ed Staniowski were given up for Scott Campbell and John Markell. Every trade is an emotional upheaval for a professional athlete. Paul MacLean was no different. His first reaction was, how is it that the Blues don't want me? And then, of course, the second reaction came to the fore, the one being, hey, you know, the Jets do want me. And along with that came the realization that because the Jets weren't really doing so well, and that's perhaps an understatement, since they finished in the cellar, winning only 9 games the year before, chances were good that Paul MacLean would see a lot more ice time. With ice time would come the opportunity to see if he really did have what it took to make it in the bigs. As it turned out, ladies and gentlemen, opportunity was all that was required. Paul MacLean averaged 37 goals a season in his first 4 years with the Jets. Coach Tommy Watt told the local press he was very pleasantly surprised by MacLean's 36 goals in his rookie year, and not nearly so surprised by the more than 100 minutes he'd spent in the penalty box. MacLean was acquired to be the muscle behind the scoring of his line mates Dale Hawerchuk, Norm DuPont. Then Watt decided to follow the design of California, who'd had great luck playing plotters like Dave Hunter and Dave Lumley with Gretzky. When he put MacLean on the line with Larry Hopkins, it allowed Hawerchuk to handle the puck more, and it worked to everyone's advantage, unleashing the unsuspected scoring power of his nibs here. MacLean became known in Winnipeg as Big Mac. The local papers were full of stories about Winnipeg's new Mac attack. He proved, as he had at every level, that he was the most consistent player on the Jets team, a recognition that came to its greatest fruition in 1985 when Paul MacLean, Antigonish, Nova Scotian Paul MacLean, ladies and gentlemen, despite playing under 4 different coaches in his first half-decade in the league, scored over 100 NHL points and was selected to play in the NHL All-Star Game. On June 13, 1988, he was traded to Detroit for Brent Ashton. He could look back at having had 4 40-plus goal-scoring seasons with the Jets and 5 seasons where he'd scored more than 30. The local press never forgave the Jets front office as headlines screamed, "Jets miss MacLean magic." In true pro fashion, MacLean changed shirts and he continued his magic in his new home. His line mates were Steve Yzerman and Gerald Gallant. They had to give up the headlines to their new partner as MacLean scored 7 goals in his first 9 games. By now a wily veteran, he even knew how to handle the press. When asked by a reporter if he was surprised by his flying start, he responded, "I expect to score every night. That's what I get paid for." Once, Mr. Smooth here even scored with no stick. Yzerman tried to slip a pass to MacLean, who was skating toward the net. Puck hit Montreal goalie Patrick Roy, who tried to poke it away. In typical delicate MacLean style, he took the puck, the goalie, and himself into the goal. He admitted to reporters that even for him, and I quote, "artistically it ranked near the bottom." He finished his first season with Detroit with a commendable 36 goals, 36 assists for 72 points. On June 15, 1989, he was traded back to where his NHL career had begun. He and Wayne Oates went to St. Louis in return for Bernie Fedorko and Tony McKegney. In this 1 year with the Blues, one article pointed out that not only did he make more money than any other player on the Blues roster, but he made twice as much as Brett Hull. I won't announce the figures here, but suffice it to say the family didn't have to beg food from the neighbors when they went home to Antigonish in the summertime. Following year, injuries pushed him in other directions. Paul MacLean signed as a scout for the Blues and then moved on to coach their Peoria farm team in the International Hockey League. He's a regular in the Danny Gallivan Canadian Airlines charity golf tournaments each year. And he's never been known to turn down a personal appearance for a charitable group if it's at all within his ability to grant it. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to present to you, forget him, field hockey team. I'm so sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, please permit me to present to you our last individual inductee tonight. As hard-working, hard-nosed an NHL right winger has ever donned a pair of skates, a guy who came up the hard way, from France to Antigonish to Hull to St. Louis to Halifax, to Lake Placid to Salt Lake City to Winnipeg to Detroit, back to St. Louis and on to Peoria, Illinois, wherever the hell that is. He even spent some time in Cold Lake, Alberta and in Chatham, New Brunswick. Paul MacLean says he realized his dream because of his stubbornness, tenacity, and his unwillingness to quit. Well, those dreams are now memories. They include his MVP season with Dalhousie, the silver medal they won, his Olympic experiences, his 719 games played with 4 different teams in 11 NHL seasons, where he made 324 goals for an average of 33 per season. More than 107 of the 108 guys drafted ahead of him way back before it all began scored fewer goals than he did. Bobby Smith being the lone exception. He could look back as well at his 349 assists, at his 944 long minutes at rest in the penalty box. He can also look back at his 100-point season, his 100-plus point season with the Jets, resulting in his 1985 NHL All-Star appearance. Paul MacLean, you've given much to your sport, to your hometown, to your province, to your country, and you went through hell to get here again tonight for us. You've been recognized elsewhere, and now it's our pleasure to recognize you here at home. We thank you for all you've done and all you've been. Ladies and gentlemen, an Antigonish Bulldog who, among other great accomplishments, has scored more goals in the NHL than any other Nova Scotian in history, Mr. Paul MacLean.
At this time, I would call upon Mr. Bill Kiley of Antigonish, a member of our board, to make the presentation to Paul.
It's the same Bill Kiley that caught him holding Sharon's hand in the back of the classroom.
Question. What is the market value for 37 goal scorers in the National Hockey League in 1995?
Well, $3.2 million.
What, the same as the going price, market price for coaches in Peoria?
We are well below the market price at this point, but we are endeavoring to seek a higher level possible.
I don't mean to make light of Peoria. Sandy said wherever the hell that is. That is a very great community that's just outside Chicago, not far from Chicago. There used to be an old showbiz tale that said if you were taking a Broadway play on the road, the judgment was, will it play in Peoria, was the expression. If it plays in Peoria, it plays on Broadway. Peoria, Paul, in his first year as coach of the Peoria Rivermen, won the Turner Trophy, the championship of the International Hockey League, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know whether we mentioned that tonight or not.
Well, we won the Eastern Conference championship. The Turner Cup is for the playoff champion.
Well, you won the
Huber Trophy.
Yeah, the Huber. We're not going to get into that.
Well, the Turner Cup kind of means a little bit more than the Huber. They give you rings for the Turner, but they give you a pat in the back for the Huber.
There is no truth to the report that this is a convenient stopover tonight, that you're en route to take over the Montreal Canadiens coaching job?
Well, mon français est pas pire, eh?
Hey, listen, you might be qualified because while Paul MacLean is from Antigonish, you were really born in France.
That would probably make me the most qualified.
I would say of all the people that are mentioned.
I haven't heard all the names just yet, but At this point, we're just happy to be here in Halifax for such a tremendous, humbling event that this is.
Well, Paul, you had a tremendous career in the National Hockey League. The Winnipeg Jets, you had some great years with the Winnipeg Jets. Does it sadden you to see what's happened to that franchise in a Canadian city?
Yeah, it does, Pat, to a great extent. The game of hockey, after all, we claim to have started the game in hockey. Winnipeg has a tremendous fan following there. They treated my wife Sharon and our family very, very well the 7 years that we played there, and it is a little bit sad that the game has evolved south of the border, but I think that's just a little bit of self-pity on Canada's part. The fact that the game of hockey has expanded into the south of the United States has meant a tremendous boom in the game of hockey as well. And as
what's the explanation for this tremendous and almost dramatic explosion of hockey in the United States?
I think it's the game that has become popular, and that the players didn't. The money wasn't as a big factor at one time. You take Wayne Gretzky and you put him in a media capital like Los Angeles, and rollerblades. They can play them in. My kids in Peoria can't wait for the new church to get built behind us so all their buddies can come over and be on the rollerblades. You can go anywhere, even in Peoria. In the summertime, they have roller hockey leagues in California, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Houston, Texas. The Houston Aeros in our league, and the International Hockey League, have summer roller hockey leagues. And the invention of the rollerblade that would allow southern states where the cost of making ice is at a high rate has really allowed the game to explode in warmer climates. It's a little bit disappointing and maybe disheartening for us here in Canada, but if the game can get that kind of a boom and grow, it's just going to make, after all, none of us are better than the game. The game continues to run its own.
Paul, you had a remarkable journey to the National Hockey League. The Hull Juniors, Dalhousie Tigers, Canadian Olympic team, and then the National Hockey League. You never played in the low minors. But that's really covering the bases, getting your education, and then pursuing the professional hockey career. Something you'd advise young fellows today?
I would advise it. Yeah, I was well-rounded by the time I got there. I got to touch all the bases, so to speak. At this point in time, when a young man is getting to be 16 and 17 years old, there's a very important decision that has to be made in his life, whether or not his abilities, he has to sit down and have a meeting with himself and decide in his heart if he's willing to make the sacrifices and the commitments necessary to play in the National Hockey League. If you feel you have the ability, first of all, and also the willingness to make that commitment, go play major junior hockey. 18 years old, you can get first-round draft picks, have to sign for $800,000. Most of them sign for $800 and less now. You can be a very young man and look after yourself and your family in a financial way, and nobody should ever ignore that. Education is important. At some point in time, we all have to go through an education process in whatever vocation that we choose. The game of hockey forces you to do it at a very young age, and that is unfair to some of the kids that fall through the cracks and have to make tough decisions at those ages. But the rewards are there for the kid that wants to make the commitment to major junior hockey. College hockey is also a very good way to do it. The reward isn't there immediately, and the player that maybe doesn't develop physically and mentally and matures as quickly as the 18-year-old should go that route. But it's up to the kid and his parents. Basically, it comes down to the boy making a conscious decision on his own to decide where he wants to play and how he wants to pursue it.
So many questions and so little time to ask them. Of all those goals in the National Hockey League, any one that stands out?
The first one?
First one. Where was it? What are the circumstances?
Edmonton Oilers, 1981, third game of the season, Grant Fears in the net. There was another one of them real pretty ones, but as long as they go, they never asked me how I scored my goals in general, they just asked me how many I got.
Exactly. Does the future include perhaps a National Hockey League coaching job ultimately if one presents itself?
Well, there's one thing that my late father taught me in his 55 years was patience, and I'm a very patient man, and I intend to continue to be.
You've been a great athlete. Paul MacLean. Best of luck. Win that Turner Cup this year. His next step. Paul MacLean, ladies and gentlemen.